Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, welcome to Mountain Mama's Home. Today I'm going to share some more tips on how to live richly on a low income.
Hello, I'm Shayla, a midlife homemaker, a wife of over 20 years, a homeschool mom of 6, and a woman of faith who has been building and mastering homemaking and homesteading skills for over 33 years. We are a family of 8 living on our dream mountain homestead, still finishing our home, so things are a little raw and rough and real here, but real is exactly what you will always get from me. I create courses and content to help overwhelmed women of faith build Christ-centered homes through biblical wisdom, frugal, elegant living, and time-tested systems that bless their families for generations. Welcome to Mountain Mama's Home, and I'm so glad you are here.
Specifically today, I am going to kind of take you through my kitchen because this is the area I get the most comments on whenever I talk about this topic. I've done a handful of other videos on how to live richly on a low income, so I will put those in the description box for you below. But as I do this video, or as I share the tips with you today, I am going to make some Black Forest cakes with my daughter. And so we're going to do some B-roll. That is one of the million reasons why we're doing B-roll. Do you hear that? That is a guinea. That is one of my son's guineas. He wanted guineas, so he went and bought guineas. And now we hear that constantly. Another reason we're going to switch to B-roll now.
Tip number 1, try to never pay full price for anything. Look for discounts on everything, even if it means you have to wait a while to get something you need.
Everything you see in here, this my husband made. This I found at a thrift store for a few bucks. My dishes were either bought at the Dollar Tree, seriously, the Dollar Tree, or they were bought at the Goodwill. I did pay full price for this new Instant Pot. I needed a new Instant Pot. I didn't think I'd find a secondhand one that I would trust, so I did pay full price for that.
So we went without a stove for 6 months because that is how long it took us to find a stove that was big enough that we could afford, that was within our budget. We needed a stove that was large enough to meet our larger family's needs and one that didn't cost as much as a car. So I'm going to start with our stove because that's the one I get the most comments about. People assume the stove is one of those $35,000 commercial ranges or vintage ranges or one of those influencer ranges that are just crazy expensive, but it's actually a Z line, which is one of the more entry-level luxury stoves, and they range between $2,000 and $5,000. Ours came in at just under $2,000, and that was only because the company made an error on our order. So we did not pay full price, but I also want to say we shopped around for a very long time before getting this stove. I'll talk more about that in a second, but I do want to be honest with you. I don't actually recommend the stove. It's been recalled a couple of times. I've been without a stove for weeks and weeks on end because of the recalls, and I don't feel the value is there for what it cost us. After all the recall repairs, it does seem to be working fine, but that's not, exactly a glowing endorsement. So what I do want to talk about is the principle behind the stove and a big Mama Jamba stove, because this is actually a living richly on less lesson. So we went without a stove for 6 months to get it because of our family size. The math just made sense. You need to understand it would take me 2 hours a day just to make pancakes for my larger family. Also, we cook everything from scratch to save money. I always have something like broth going constantly. I cook from scratch with multiple things on the stove at once. And I also need serious oven space to feed my crew. On a standard 4-burner stove, I was constantly cooking. I was losing significant time every day in the kitchen. And here's the thing, time is money. And as a homeschooling mom, every hour I spend just trying to survive and making the next meal was an hour I wasn't teaching my kids, not present with my family, slaving over the stove. So we made a deliberate choice to invest a little more upfront in what we thought was going to be a quality stove in order to get time back long term. That is living richly on less. It's about not buying the cheap thing that is only going to last a year. It's about being strategic with where you spend saving so you can protect what matters most. Now, something that's really encouraging about living this way intentionally is when you're strategic about where your money goes. Sometimes you'll find yourself with that little margin to spend on something special that makes your home feel good. Something that isn't maybe a need, but it's a genuine joy. One of the ways I like to live richly in the kitchen specifically is through odor control, because let's be honest, one of the ways you can make your kitchen feel rich is with smells, and kitchens can smell bad sometimes. When you're cooking from scratch, rendering broth like I'm doing today, working with garlic and onions, it's just part of the territory. The practical side of that, though, is staying on top of the source, making sure the trash goes out regularly, cleaning the trash can itself, and wiping down surfaces, especially your wooden surfaces. But the atmosphere side of it, the part that makes your kitchen feel like a place you actually want to be, that's where bringing some nice scents in can make a big difference. I like candles for that. A good candle doesn't just cover odors, it transforms the whole feel of the room. And that brings me to today's sponsor, which is genuinely one of those small things that has made a very special difference in our home.
I want to take a quick moment to share a brand that I have genuinely been loving for months now, and the brand that made today's video possible. This is actually my second time working with the Devour candle company, and I don't say this lightly. These candles have become a staple in our home. If you're someone who cares about what you're bringing into your space, you will appreciate these candles. Their candles are made with pure beeswax, organic coconut oil, and essential oils. No junk, no synthetic and dangerous fragrances. None of the toxins you find in a lot of store-bought candles. You can really tell the difference. They burn so clean and the glow is beautiful. And it just creates this really calm, cozy atmosphere in the home. So fun fact, have you ever Googled how beeswax can clean the air? Look it up, it's fascinating. Now, as we're moving into spring and summer, if you want something light and fresh, I highly recommend Brisk Dawn, Citrus Garden, or Fresh Petals.
Devour just sent me Golden Bloom, which is another one I recommend. It's absolutely lovely.
Also, a little tip, make sure you let the wax melt all the way to the edges of your first burn. This helps your candles last longer and burn evenly. Something I love about these candles is that they are handcrafted. These candles are handcrafted in Pennsylvania, and you can really feel the care behind them. So if you've been wanting to switch to something more natural, but still luxurious, I definitely recommend giving Devour candles a try. I will drop a link for you in the description box and the pinned comment. Devour will have a discount code for you, so be sure to look for that in the description and the pinned comment below along with the link. If you're low income, but you want to live richly, one big piece of advice that I have picked up over my 22 years of being a wife and a mother and a homemaker. I was a homemaker before that. I was homemaking for my family that I grew up in. So I've actually been practicing and learning the arts of homemaking for 33 years. And I've been broke for most of those years. Something I've learned through all of those years is that, and this was a hard, very, very hard lesson to learn. I had to learn it the hard way. But it's that invest the most in the rooms where the most industry is happening, the rooms you need the most, the rooms you're going to use the most. I think for pretty much every homemaker, that's gonna come down to two rooms, your kitchen and your laundry room. If you have a crappy kitchen, you're not gonna be able to save very much money over all of the years together if you have crappy tools to work with. The reason why is you're going to end up constantly replacing things. Constantly replacing your stove if you go for the bottom of the line stoves all the time. You're gonna end up spending more in the long run. You're gonna end up spending more on your dishwasher if you have one. You're gonna end up spending more, let's say on your refrigerator. Oh my goodness. You're best off trying to save up to buy quality. This comes to your kitchen appliances, comes to your laundry room appliances, and it comes to your kitchen tools that you use often. And if you are a from scratch cook, which I hope you are because it's better for you and it saves a ton of money, you're gonna need industrial tools that aren't gonna be wearing out every couple months. Most of your stuff that you get at large chain stores, you're gonna have to be replacing on a consistent basis. You'll be saving a lot of money in the long run if you find yourself an industrial kitchen store where you can buy the good, whatever it is, good can opener, good appliances straight off the bat. That way you won't have to replace them, hopefully, as soon as you would if you were buying the cheap stuff.
Really briefly, I want to tell you what's happening in this cute little scene. My daughter wanted to make a Black Forest cake and she really wanted the cherry flavor to be strong, so we ordered this on Amazon. I didn't even know it existed until we went to find this, but it really did boost the flavor of the cherry and the Black Forest cake. Into another tip that I have for you though is to build your kitchen around ingredients, not necessarily products. So a rich kitchen, it doesn't need to be filled with specialty items and convenience foods. It needs to be stocked with basics that you can turn into dozens of meals. So flour, butter, potatoes, rice, beans, onions, broth, garlic, lots and lots of garlic, eggs, oats, and spices. These will all stretch further than expensive meal solutions ever will. It just so happened I had some frozen vegetables on the counter as I was filming this, and I realized, hey, this is a tip I could share with you. Instead of buying fresh vegetables all the time to cook for your family, look for good frozen vegetables. The reason frozen vegetables are better is because a lot of times you can buy them or less and they're fresher. They're packed with more nutrients since they're brought in fresh from the field and flash frozen. This is a tip that I learned from my Depression era grandma who used to work in a vegetable packing plant. What I'm going to teach you next might shock some of you. But have you ever noticed or considered that burnout costs money? It is so important to protect your energy as a homemaker and especially as a from scratch cook, and to protect your energy like it is part of the budget. Burned out homemakers, think about it. We spend more money because exhaustion leads to all kinds of things. When you're exhausted, you're more prone to scroll on your phone and see things that you don't necessarily need, but that catch your attention, and you're more likely to spend money. You're more likely to buy takeout or like call your husband on the way home and say, hey, could you just pick up dinner tonight? Because you were burnt out and you were too tired to make something. Burnout leads to not thinking as clearly. So it leads to things like forgotten groceries and all kinds of impulse buys. Simple systems, prep routines, manageable meal plans that are not overwhelming. These are all ways that you can protect your energy like it's part of the budget. And another way is every single time you cook something, don't make just one batch. When you make just one batch, you're spending the same amount of electricity as if you were batch cooking several. So when I am making something, I will make as many extra as I can afford to make. And I'll put the extra in the freezer or in the fridge for later use later on in the week. This saves me time and it saves me money. If you want to make your kitchen more elegant, look for bowls like this at Goodwill. You can find them for just a few bucks. Also, measuring cups, look for ones that don't have a seam. The ones with a seam are going to wear out within a year or less, depending on how much you cook. So use measuring cups that don't have that welded seam right in here. Use ones like this. Same thing with your measuring spoons. Don't use ones that have any welding on them. They will break down in no time. Some of our best investments for measuring are these kind. We found this. I haven't been able to find it again, but wooden spoons, wooden teaspoons. They have lasted 10 years. If you want quality tiles and quality backsplash to protect your kitchen behind your stove and your backsplash areas, learn to do it yourself. Also, it helps to learn to have patience. I cooked in low quality kitchens, dreaming of this beautiful backsplash that I wanted for over a decade before I actually was able to get it.
Also, with that said, there is a difference between low income and poverty. I'm not saying that I'm living in poverty. A lot of people have no idea there's a difference between the two and they think they're one and the same. They are not. Look it up. Another thing is low income varies by state and even by county. So my low income might not look like your low income. Some of these tips and things I'm sharing, they might not work for you. They did work for us, but please keep in mind that everything you see, everything here is collected and built over a 2-decade plus time period. So patience. It takes time. And if you think that you're going to be able to build something beautiful and worthwhile overnight on a low budget, well, that's not going to happen.
Another serious tip that I have is invest in good countertops. 5 years. 5 years is the maximum amount of time I would get out of countertops before investing in one that was made to last. What happens when your countertops that are cheap start wearing out is you start getting water leaks, water damage going down the back of your sink. You start getting mold, black mold. If you're a serious from scratch cook, you need quality countertops. For over 20 years, I was cooking in either makeshift kitchens or 2 small kitchens. Some of my countertops were OSB in times past. And if you don't know what OSB is, it's some of the cheapest wood you can find that is actually wood shavings pressed together. It doesn't last, it rots out, but we did what we had to do. So after cooking for all of these years for my family on countertop like that at times, my husband, he wanted me to have something special. Now, I told him I just wanted a cheap countertop, and he says, nope, we've been there, done that. I don't want to have to replace this thing in a couple years with as much cooking as you do, so we're going to get something quality made to last. But still, we did not pay full price on this. We found a deal. We went and we did the 2-year financing with 0 interest. That meant that for 2 years we were paying for this countertop, but it was small payments each month that were manageable. We never would have been able to run out and get this countertop. And you can see what I was cooking on before. Go back and look at my other kitchen videos. You'll see what this kitchen and the countertop situation we had before. But if you want to live richly on less in your kitchen, countertops are one of the areas that pay off in the long run to invest a little more in, unless you want to be replacing them again soon. So my cabinets were clearance. A business was swapping out their show kitchen, and so I paid about 1/8 of the price for my cabinets. I got really lucky. The island is actually a hodgepodge. In our previous home, we had all these bookcases. I got them at Walmart. They were like $30 a piece. So the rest of the island, I got one cabinet in the island. The rest of the island is mainly these bookcases. Hodgepodge kitchens. You can make hodgepodge kitchens work. That's what I've almost always done. And you can make them look nice too. When we lived in the Midwest over 13 years, all I really had were hodgepodge kitchens, and my friends never knew how frustrating they were to cook in because of how pretty I was able to make them despite being hodgepodge. As you can see, some of those wooden crates are different colors than the others because some were found at various places like thrift stores and antique stores. When it comes to crates, again, you can find secondhand. So I bought this one at Walmart. It was new. I did pay full price for that. So I will say there are a couple things in here. But the 7-Up crate was a antique and it was given to me. The rest of these crates were either clearance or Goodwill. This is a cake cutter offer topper. Cake cutter offer. Cake topper cutter offer. Cake
top cutter.
Cake top cutter offer. That's what they call it.
Yeah, it's called cake cutter.
One of the things I did to save money when my kids were all growing up was instead of going and buying their birthday cakes, I learned how to do cake decorating. So I invested in some quality instruments like this. Instead of buying cakes, I bought things like this. And I think it probably took me about a year or two to slowly stock up on all the cake decorating supplies. Because all we had near us, we didn't have Amazon back then, all there was this one cake store, and everything in it cost considerably. Like, you can buy things like this on Amazon now for cheap, but back then you couldn't. So what I would do is I would budget for it. And over the course of like a year, maybe 2, I stocked up on all of these things like the cake cutter offer toppers. Leave it to the teen boy. He has officially dubbed it the cake decapitator. I think maybe we spent too much time in history study this last year.
Brings me to my next tip, of course, which is building skill. The more skills you build, the less you have to pay somebody else for something. One example that I can give you is you learn to cook a handful of simpler meals, but you learn how to cook them very well. This can go a long ways, and it can help you stretch your budget. So homemade soups, bread, homemade beans and cornbread, roasted chicken with potatoes, all of these things, if you cook them very, very well, they can be stretched. And if you build skill, you can know how to take things like a simple chicken, cook it well, and then take whatever is left and make another dish from that, like a soup, that is nutritious and delicious and stretches.
I got behind it. I'd let you take my breath away. Pick me up like you're my aeroplane. You and me, you know, will never fade. Come on, baby, we got rules to...
I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, and if you have been watching this movie as you're listening to it, you might have seen in the background on the stove there's something simmering. An old-fashioned tip for living richly on less is to keep a pot of stock going. So old-fashioned kitchens that saved money and nourished their families, they didn't start from scratch 3 times a day. They would make soup, beans, And they would make a lot of these with broth that had been simmering slowly for hours on the back burner. Every scrap of vegetables, every potato peel, every uneaten portion of veggie, or even scraps of meat, bones, chicken bones, beef bones, and all of the scraps left over from cooking a roast or something like that would be simmered on the back burner, and they would simmer to a really long simmer. And so by doing that, what happens is the cartilage breaks down in the joints of the meat breaks down, and you wind up, especially if you add a bunch of vegetables to it too, and like vegetable peels, you wind up with a very rich, very delicious broth that honestly tastes like something that came from a French kitchen, from a 5-star restaurant. Another tip for living richly on less is to learn to cook with cast iron. Cast iron is the most durable. It makes the best food if you learn how to cook on it. Now, you do want some stainless steel or some ceramic or something like that as well, because you don't want to cook acidic foods in cast iron, because it will leach the iron and also ruin the coating that you have worked hard to create on your cast iron. See, here's the thing. You can go through 50 cheap Teflon pans, but that one cast iron pan, it'll still be standing through all of it.
These bread containers, or these plastic containers, I budget for these. When I saw these the first time, I was intrigued, because I think all of us have experiences with containers where we buy some containers and they don't last and we have to replace them consistently. Well, I found these at an industrial kitchen store, and they're tough. I love them. I use them for everything. And so every 2 months or so, I'll pick up another one. At least that's how I did it for a while, until I got stocked up with all that I needed. But now I will have these, I'm pretty sure I'll have these forever. And they're very sturdy. They're gonna last a long time. And I won't have to be replacing them and spending money to replace containers all of the time now.
Another tidbit that I learned from my Depression-era grandma was to save these containers that are free because you buy them for the food. You don't buy the container. The container's free. It comes with the food. And so save them. And you know what they are the best for? When you go to freeze broth or freeze your soups, if you put them in like any kind of a container, they're very likely to break if they're in any plastic. And that's been my case anyways. So I like to use these cheap containers, because if they break, it's not a loss that I actually spent money on. Everybody used to laugh at Grandma for saving her containers, and I will admit there were some she may have gone a little overboard on, but she was frugal.
Now, my whole channel is full of low income and frugal tips, by the way.